Step outside. The wind hits you first. It is not cold the way a winter morning is cold. It is a deep, patient cold that pulls the heat out of your fingers in minutes and doesn't stop. There is no coat in a shop, no heating to come back to, no roof that isn't one you built yourself. This was the world for tens of thousands of years. And your ancestors didn't just visit it. They lived their whole lives in it, were born into it, raised children in it, grew old in it. You would not last a day. But they did for 1,000 generations. And the reason why says something surprising about what you actually are. We picture the Ice Age as a frozen wasteland where humans barely clung on, shivering and starving at the edge of extinction. But that picture is wrong. The people who lived through the coldest stretch, the period scientists call the last glacial maximum around 20,000 years ago, were not barely surviving. They were thriving. They made art. They made music. They buried their dead with care. They did all of this in conditions that would kill almost any modern person dropped into them unprepared. So how? You have no fur. You have no cause. Your body sheds heat fast and stores almost no defense against cold. By every measure, you are a tropical animal standing in a freezer. What did they have that you don't? The answer isn't strength. It's something stranger, and it is the real superpower of our entire species. Start with the most basic problem there is: warmth. A naked human in Ice Age cold dies in hours, so your ancestors did something no other animal on Earth has ever done. They wore other animals. We know exactly how good they got at this because of a man who walked out of the ice and into our hands 5,000 years ago. The name we gave him is Otzi. He was found frozen high in the Alps, preserved so completely that we can still read what he was wearing the day he died. And his clothing was not a crude skin thrown over the shoulders. It was a system, a coat made of stitched strips of goat and sheep hide, leggings tied to a belt, a bearskin cap with a chin strap to hold it in the wind, shoes insulated with grass, with bearskin soles and deer-hide uppers, layered, tailored, sewn with real care. That word matters more than it sounds. Sewn. Because to sew, you need a needle, and to have a needle, someone first had to invent it. Archaeologists have found eye needles, carved from bone and ivory, that are tens of thousands of years old, some of the oldest from sites across Siberia and what is now China. With a needle and sinew thread, your ancestors could make fitted, closed clothing that trapped a layer of warm air against the skin and sealed out the wind. That single invention, a sliver of bone with a hole in it, is the line between freezing to death and walking through winter alive. Now picture the day. You wake before light inside a shelter, and the shelter itself is a quiet miracle. In places where there were no caves and no forests, out on the open frozen plains of what is now Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered something astonishing. Homes built from the bones of mammoths. At a site called Mesorik, people stacked hundreds of mammoth bones, great curving tusks framing the doorway, into domed huts that could stand against the wind for years. They built houses out of the largest, most dangerous animals they hunted. And here is the proof that they were not merely clinging on. Deep in those same frozen millennia, your ancestors made art. They carved small figures of women, the Venus figurines, from stone and ivory and bone, some of them more than 30,000 years old. They painted horses and lions and bison onto cave walls by the flickering light of fat-burning lamps, images so alive and so assured that modern artists still stand before them in awe. They carved flutes from the wing bones of vultures and from mammoth ivory, real instruments carefully tuned that can still be played today. Sit with what that means. People with music, people with art, people who, in the very teeth of an ice age, found the time and the spirit to make beautiful things that did nothing at all to keep them warm or fed. You do not carve a flute when you are one bad day from starving. You do not spend long hours grinding ivory into the shape of a woman or crawl deep into a freezing cave to paint by lamplight if every waking moment is a desperate scramble just to stay alive. The art is the evidence. These were not frightened creatures barely hanging on at the edge of the world. They were people with leisure, with belief, with a deep inner life, who had so thoroughly mastered a brutal world that they had energy left over for beauty. You step out to find food, and here's where most modern people would simply lie down and give up. For half the year there are almost no plants to gather. The land is grass, snow, and herds of enormous animals. To eat, you must hunt mammoth, bison, reindeer, wild horse. Animals far bigger and stronger and faster than you. You cannot do this alone, and you cannot do it with raw muscle. You do it with the thing that actually makes humans deadly. Planning, cooperation, memory. Your ancestors knew the migration routes by heart, passed down for generations. They knew the weak points of the land. They drove herds toward cliffs, into bogs, into natural traps. They worked in coordinated groups, each person knowing their role, the kill shared, the meat cached in the frozen ground like a natural deep freeze to be eaten through the lean months. This is the secret, and it never changes through the whole Ice Age. No human ever survived because they were tough enough on their own. They survived because they were never on their own. The group was the technology, the shared knowledge, handed from the old to the young around the fire through the long dark, was worth more than any claw or coat or fang. And that fire mattered for far more than warmth. The archaeologist Brian Fagan has written about how, in the Ice Age, the hearth was the center of the entire human world. It thawed frozen meat and frozen hands. It held the dark and its predators at bay through the night. People even carved hollow stones into lamps and burned animal fat in them, carrying small flames into the deep dark of caves to paint by. But most of all, the fire was where the knowledge lived. It was where an elder taught a child which tracks meant reindeer, and which meant danger, which clouds carried a passing flurry, and which carried a storm that could kill a whole band. Lose the fire, and you did not just lose heat. You lost the library, the school, and the map all at once. There was even a four-legged ally beginning to take shape. Sometime during these frozen millennia, wolves drawn to human camps and fires slowly became something new. The first dogs, partners in the hunt, sentries against the dark, warmth on a cold night. Your ancestors did not only wear other animals and shelter in their bones, they made friends of them too. And consider what they actually ate, because it is not what you guess. In a frozen world with almost no plants for half the year, fat was life itself. Lean meat alone cannot sustain a human being. Eat nothing but it for long enough and you starve, even with a full stomach. Your ancestors knew this in their bones. They prized the fattiest parts of an animal, the marrow cracked out from inside the bones, the rich organs, the back fat of a reindeer. A single mammoth, butchered and cached in the frozen ground like a natural deep freeze, could feed a band for weeks. Nothing was wasted. Hide became clothing and shelter. Bone became needles, tools, the frame of a house, even fuel. Sinew became thread and bowstring. Fat became both food and light, burning slow in a hollowed stone lamp. And the fire itself had to be made, not simply found. Strike the right stone against a nugget of iron pyrite, and you get a spark. Spin a wooden drill fast enough against a board, and you coax an ember out of friction and patience alone. In damp, freezing conditions, with stiff, cold hands, this was a genuine and difficult skill, learned young and practiced across a whole lifetime. A person who could not make fire in the Ice Age was a person who could not survive a single night alone. So now you understand why you wouldn't last a day. It was never about being strong enough to take the cold. The cold does not care how strong you are. You would fail because you don't know how to make the needle, sew the coat, read the herd, build a house from mammoth bone, coax fire from nothing, or move as one part of a group that has spent 100 lifetimes learning a frozen world by heart. Your ancestors didn't beat the Ice Age with their bodies. They beat it with everything their bodies could not do alone. Tools that extended them past their own skin, clothing that became a second hide, fire that became a second sun, and a group that remembered far more than any single person ever could. And here is the part that should stay with you, because it is still true right now. That same machinery is inside you today. The drive to invent a tool for every problem. The deep need to belong to a group and be missed when you're gone. You think of those as personality traits or modern conveniences. They are not. They are Ice Age survival gear, forged in a cold you will never have to feel, and they are the only reason your particular line of ancestors never once broke across tens of thousands of frozen years. So step back inside. Feel the warmth that arrives without you doing anything for it. The coat that came folded on a shelf. The walls you did not have to raise from the bones of a giant. The fire you summoned by touching a switch. For tens of thousands of years, none of that was given. Every single degree of warmth was earned, invented, sewn, carried, and shared. You wouldn't last a day out there. But you are carrying the people who lasted 100,000 of them, and they are the only reason you get to be warm enough, safe enough, and comfortable enough to forget they ever existed.